Hi everybody, thanks for watching my next video on my channel, Recovering from Narcissist Abuse. So the other day I got a message from somebody on Facebook, nothing bad. This one's actually was looking for some advice, so get right into it. Ollie, I'm having a tough time. My family is trying to destroy my reputation with the extended family. One of my cousins I grew up with no longer calls me. I just found out I will be left out of the will, so will my golden child sister, and her one kid will get everything, while me and my three kids get nothing. Okay. First thing before I get to um, the major part of the video. Your parents and no narcissist has the ability to destroy your reputation with your family. And what I mean by that is if that quote unquote family member is going to take with one side of the story and isn't going to take the time to pick up a phone or write a letter or send an email or whatever, have enough of a relationship to call you yourself and find out what's going on, then that person's not worth getting upset over. Just because you share some kind of DNA, common DNA with them, doesn't make them a family member. Makes you DNA related. Okay, behavior makes you a family member. Because if somebody's going to take the time, okay, to listen to one side of the story, because if somebody didn't really wanted to stay neutral, what they would say is immediately, you know what, I really don't want to hear this. I want to stay out of it. And they would leave it at that. But if somebody's going to sit there and listen to one side of the story and then stay away from the other side without giving you so much as the respect of a phone call, an email, something, anything, those people aren't worth your time anyway. And just because they're quote unquote family members doesn't make them family. Behavior makes you family. Somebody who acts like a family member, somebody who's there for you, you know, when you need the most. We keep these people around because we think we deserve what happens to us, and you're only worth a certain amount of support or respect, and you see people with quote unquote normal families and how they rally around each other and they're there to back each other up. And in these narcissist structures, narcissists love to talk about family, but they don't know the first thing about it. It's the illusion of family. It's none of it's real because the narcissist is throwing, these narcissistic families where, you have that structure. It's not enjoyable. It's not fun. You do it because you're afraid to be alone. You do it because you think you need these people because you share some kind of blood relationship with them. You owe them something. You don't. You don't know anybody anything who's going to leave you hanging out to dry. You don't owe anybody anything unless they earn that from you. That's something that needs to be earned. And victims of narcissistic abuse, it's like we give our respect away to people and we don't make anybody earn anything. And it's time for people to start earning our goddamn respect. Okay. And just because you share a DNA relation to somebody doesn't make them family. And it doesn't mean you owe them anything. Now, the second part, the will. I really think the final will and testament is probably one of the main reasons why so many people put up with the narcissist. and put up with these personalities disorders. Because narcissists are very good at acquiring wealth and money, and especially in these large families. If you look at the person that's causing the most money, causing the most problems in the family, usually they're the figurehead, and usually they're the ones with all the money. And nobody wants to piss them off because they don't want to get cut out of the will. But what is that will? That will is the narcissist's ultimate means of control. It's their best tactic they have. I'll cut you out of the will. And so many people fall in line with it. And you know what the sad, sad reality is? You're never going to see that money anyway. Because people like this are always going to find a reason to cut you off. They're always going to find a reason to hold you up and string you along and make you it's control. And once you're resigned, and I made this decision before I went no contact, I knew I was going to be walking away from a lot of money from my family, because my family has money. But all their money was a leash. It was a choker collar that they could yank up on you and choke it up at any time to get you to do whatever you want. But it was false. Once you lose fear of getting cut out of a will, they got no power anymore. They have no more power. They have nothing to hold over your head. And it's very liberating. And it drives them crazy. Because what is that last will and testament, really? I mean, especially to a narc. It's their final say-so. It's their final fuck you to the world, and it's their most narcissistic statement that they could make, cutting out their own child, and this is what I had to do. It's their way of making an impact, of being remembered. Because a narcissist only can control the narrative as long as they're alive. Once they're gone, that's it. They can't fight back anymore. And I think that's what really scares them. I speak from firsthand experience with this whole will business. As I said, my grandmother on my mother's side was the devil. The worst type of narcissist you've ever wanted to encounter. Well, back in 06, she had become an extreme hoarder, and the family had very limited contact with her because of her antics and her ways. And it was a Sunday morning, and my mother and father came over to my house, very upset, because they actually tried to go over there, and they hadn't tried to get in there for a couple of years. And my grandmother wouldn't let him in, and my mother said she could see in, and the house was a disaster. And my father, they're like, we don't know what to do. She's going to cut us out. There's something going on. So my father, knowing I had a lot of legal experience through work, and I was a firefighter and an EMT for 3 years, so I did know how the system worked. And what I told him to do was I told him to call this phone number. It's called 262-HELP, and it's a suicide line. I told him to talk to them, and they would get you in touch with adult services, that you have a welfare complaint, and they would send somebody over to get the ball rolling. That's what my father did. The next day, adult services called him. He gave her the story. Fast forward about a week, I'm at work. I'm working in Jersey City at the time. My father calls me. He goes, adult services is over at Virginia's house. That's my grandmother. they're taking her into state custody. Now, I haven't really spoken to my grandmother at that. I hadn't been having a relationship with her since '99, and I'll go into that in another video because it gets into deeper history with my family. But I went over there because I lived in the same town as Virginia. So I knew the cops in town. And when I got there, there were 2 patrol cars, an ambulance in front, and a state car. And I'm walking up the driveway, and the state worker comes out, and I tell her who I am. And as much as my grandmother was issues, I had problems with my grandmother. My grandmother didn't necessarily have issues with me. Of all the people, she really didn't care for anybody, but if there was anybody she really did care for, it was me. And it's because I looked exactly like her husband. But I knew she was evil, and I knew she was up to no good regardless. So I kind of like tricked her out of the house, and I told her, no, just sit on the gurney, Grandma. And as soon as she sat down, I strapped her in because I knew how to work the gurneys. Strapped her in, they rolled her in, and I took her house keys and slammed the ambulance door shut as they took her away crying. So 30 seconds later, here comes my father from down the road. Because I guess because he was watching, because he's too much of a friggin' pussy to try to get involved himself, you know. Whenever there's real authority around you, he hides. So I give him the keys. He goes, locks up. The next morning, I get a frantic phone call from my mother. Daddy got into the house. He got into Virginia's safe. She cut us all out of the will. She cut us all out of the will, and she's leaving everything to one of her friends. Now, my grandmother, I guess she had early stage. She was going into the early stages of Alzheimer's at the time, so she was slipping. The fact that she would have been able to do this was stunning. But also was going to be split between my Aunt Ginny. My one mother's sister wasn't cut out. My mother was cut out, and her family, my brother, my father, and me, and her sister Barbara was to be cut out. And my Aunt Ginny was to be the executor of the will, and the house was going to be left to this friend that nobody knew about, and everything else was going to go to my aunt. So what my father did was he destroyed the will, because they had a copy of her previous will that everybody. He destroyed the will, and then told my Aunt Ginny, who was still supposed to be involved in the will, that he had found the note saying Ginny and the kids out, but he never did. He made that up, so Ginny would go along with going back to the original will and cutting out this other woman. Totally illegal. It was a notarized copy, destroyed. But in this country and in New Jersey, you destroy that's it. And all you have is the old notarized copy. Game over. Game over. Another narcissist, her ultimate act of defiance was supposed to be the family finding out that she was cut out, that they were cut out of the will. Now, I could have cared less at that point, because I already knew she was evil. And the long and the short of it is, the state committed her into a mental institution until my parents could try to get her into an extended living place, which she was completely acting up. And they were stringing her along enough. They were trying to string her along long enough to make sure that they could clean out her house, because it was completely hoarded, sell it before this other woman who was supposed to be involved with the will could get back in. And like 3 days before Virginia died, as they were going to transfer her to a final place, like a total place that was supposed to be able to handle her, my father whispered in her ear, "We found your will, we destroyed it, and we took all your money." And she died literally 2 days later. Even though I wished it that day that she died, that she would die, it was like Virginia knew at that point she had nothing left to live for. She couldn't control anything. She couldn't control her money. She couldn't control any of it. And she died within congenitive heart failure. Basically within 48 hours of her finding out that the will was gone, it was destroyed, we were getting it, we were getting everything, and your house is already cleaned out. You're never going to win with the narcissist if you play their game. You know, my parents in their mind, and even me at some point, at one point, thought that that was some kind of victory. There was no victory there. Because it was meaningless money. And they made a fortune on the house and the sisters, and that's fine. And the long and the short of it was they probably were entitled to that money for the nonsense that they went through. But the money didn't change anything. It made it worse. It made my mother's behavior worse. It made her relationship with her two sisters worse. The money doesn't solve anything. And so many of us would hang in for the money, saying, "Oh, it's what I'm owed." It doesn't help. It makes matters worse. If you're even going to get it, which, in my opinion, chances are, if you're dealing with a narcissist and there's some kind of will, chances are pretty damn good that you're going to be cut out. And if you're not, you're going to be tortured over it every single opportunity that that narcissist has. They're going to do it. So I'd like to hear your comments, your thoughts. Keep subscribing, keep liking, and thanks for watching. I'll see you real soon.